I'll just chant it.
Okay.
Original sound from musicians is good. Let's see what's happening here. Audio settings. Oh, what's up?
Six.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajacharya Astotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajacharya Astotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Girgovardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu, and welcome to everyone to Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Friday, December 8th, 2023 in New York, and we are reading in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 26th chapter tonight, starting with text number 31. The chapter is entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. Kapila Dev is going into some great detail explaining these fundamental principles to his mother Devahuti. And we can say, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Nice to hear you chanting. So let's see. Would you like to start off the reading or nominate someone else?
I'll start it. Unless Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you like to read?
Yes, I would like to read, but after you, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Text 31. Tajasan Indriyan Yeva Kriyagyan Vibhagashaha Pranasya hi Kriya Shaktir Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita. Translation. Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses: the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. The senses of action depend on the vital energy, and the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. Purport. It has been explained in the previous verses that mind is the product of ego in goodness, and that the function of the mind is acceptance and rejection according to desire. But here, intelligence is said to be the product of ego in passion. That is the distinction between mind and intelligence. Mind is a product of egoism in goodness, and intelligence is a product of egoism in passion. Excuse me. The desire to accept something and reject something is a very important factor of the mind. Since mind is a product of the mode of goodness, if it is fixed upon the Lord of the mind, Aniruddha, then the mind can be changed to Krishna consciousness. It is stated by Narottam Das Thakur that we always have desires. Desire cannot be stopped. But if we transfer our desires to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the perfection of life. As soon as the desire is transferred to lording it over material nature, it becomes contaminated by matter. Desire has to be purified. In the beginning, this purification process has to be carried out by the order of the spiritual master, since the spiritual master knows how the disciples' desires can be transformed into Krishna consciousness. As far as intelligence is concerned, it is clearly stated here that it is a product of egoism and passion. By practice, one comes to the point of the mode of goodness. And by surrendering or fixing the mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes a very great personality, or Mahatma. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabhaha. Such a great soul is very rare. In this verse, it is clear that both kinds of senses, the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses for action, are products of egoism in the mode of passion. And because the sense organs for activity and for acquiring knowledge require energy, the vital energy or life energy is also produced by egoism in the mode of passion. We can actually see, therefore, that those who are very passionate can improve in material acquisition very quickly. It is recommended in the Vedic scriptures that if one wants to encourage a person in acquiring material possessions, one should also encourage him in sex life. We naturally find that those who are addicted to sex life are also materially advanced, because sex life, or passionate life, is the impetus for the material advancement of civilization. For those who want to make spiritual advancement, there is almost no existence of the mode of passion. Only the mode of goodness is prominent. We find that those who engage in Krishna consciousness are materially poor, but one who has eyes can see who is the greater. Although he appears to be materially poor, a person in Krishna consciousness is not actually a poor man, but the person who has no taste for Krishna consciousness and appears to be very happy with material possessions is actually poor. Persons infatuated by material consciousness are very intelligent in understanding, persons infatuated by material consciousness are very intelligent in discovering things for material comforts, but they have no access to understanding the spirit soul and spiritual life. Therefore, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he has to come back to the platform of purified desire, the purified desire for devotional service. As stated in the Narada Pancharatra, engagement in the service of the Lord when the senses are purified in Krishna consciousness is called pure devotion. Om Jnana Tamanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshum Ritanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So when a person who is on the platform of gross materialism sees devotees on the streets chanting Hare Krishna, they think that they're like unqualified, sentimental, materially incapable. They think they quickly come to the conclusion that these persons, they can't do anything material. That's why they're doing this. They're just, they see everything Atmavan Manyate Jagat according to their own consciousness. They're gauging and quantifying the value of a person by what their values are. And they miss the point entirely, because the devotees are rich in spiritual culture. And although a materialist may be accumulating and making his life apparently materially comfortable, although that's the question whether that really takes place for any length of time, he doesn't understand the first thing, that he's not the body, he's the soul, that this is one of many lifetimes, that what he does in this life affects his situation in the next life, that his treatment of other living entities is going to be revisited upon him in the future. So he can't see anything. He's actually in the darkest ignorance. But he has a flair for accumulating wealth and becoming famous or becoming powerful. And he thinks that this is the goal of life. So Prabhupada's dismissing all of that by saying, we find that those who engage in Krishna consciousness are materially poor, but one who has eyes can see who is the greater. Although he appears to be materially poor, a person in Krishna consciousness is not actually a poor man. But the person who has no taste for Krishna consciousness and appears to be very happy with material possessions is actually poor. That's the situation. I remember years and years ago, I can't remember how many years ago, they were doing some sort of, I don't know, survey of different countries in the world. And they were ranking countries by, somehow they were quantifying this, I don't know how, by how happy the people were. And at that time, they concluded that the happiest people of the world lived in Bangladesh, which is, by material calculations, one of the poorest countries in the world. And at least at that time. And it was mystifying. I remember reading it and thinking, wow, how could that be? But then you think about it. If you go to Bangladesh, you'll find, of course, there's some spiritual cultures, Muslim culture, there's some Vaishnavas there. They're engaged in some spiritual culture. So in spite of the fact, and then you come to a country like the United States today and find that a large percentage of the people are taking antidepressants and having all kinds of anxiety, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and feeling that they can't make ends meet, and they're always under pressure, always worried about what's going to happen next, always worried about losing everything that they have. They're so busy acquiring. I have firsthand experience of this, that you become worried about losing what you have. So that anxiety always lurks in the back of your mind. That's not spiritual culture. That's just materialism. So Krishna consciousness offers us a way out of that, a way off of that wheel, the gerbil's wheel in the cage. Is running and running and running and running and really getting nowhere and thinking he's getting somewhere. Materialists are running, thinking they're getting somewhere, but it all gets stripped away in the end anyway. It's of no point. It's useless. So Narottam Das Thakur says we always have desires, Prabhupada points out here, but we have to spiritualize those desires. If we transfer, Prabhupada says, our desire to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the perfection of life. As soon as desire is transferred to lording it over material nature, it becomes contaminated by matter. Desire has to be purified. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. I had a question, or maybe just a reflection. He speaks at some length in this purport about the need for purifying desire. Desire can't be stopped. They have to be purified. They have to be purified under superior guidance. In our experience, the mind and senses want to operate unrestrictedly. The mind wants what it wants. The senses want to do what they want to do. And it almost seems like the senses and the mind are just looking for anything out there to gratify themselves, to try to get some happiness. And then the spiritual master sees the way that the senses are working in the disciple and just plugs them into some productive outlet in Krishna consciousness. Because it in my experience, when you have desires, like Narottama Das Thakur says, they cannot be stopped. But if you can just divert them, like a child who's wants a knife from the cutlery section of the kitchen, and they have to be replaced with something else. You can't just take that thing away. You have to replace it with something else. And 9 times out of 10, you replace the harmful thing with the good thing, and everything's cool. There's peace. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. It's incumbent upon the disciple to actually follow those instructions and take it up, though.
Yeah.
And not to put down the order and go back. Like a child, you can hold their attention for a few moments or whatever, but because their intelligence isn't developed, they quickly become attracted to something else. It's almost as if you never recommended anything to them.
Right. Therefore, constant chanting is recommended also. Saraswati Mataji has her hand up.
Pranams to all. And I can agree with what you've said, Prabhuji, about children wanting to assert their little bit of independence. And, as a mother, I know my child in winter, she'd want to wear summer clothes and vice versa. So what I used to do is just leave all the winter stuff, like she can pick from 4 or 5 outfits. So then she has to make a selection from that. And she was quite happy. So I think with giving a limited choice, but suitable choices is the answer there. And I was wondering if I can try share that schematic flowchart of the material universe creation, because I actually wanted to ask questions based on that from the relevance to the verse we've just read. May I try to screen share that?
Please do. And then if I have to do something, I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if I can find it. Bhagavatam. So is it
Yep.
working?
Yep. There we go.
Okay, so the question here, what we've been told is how the mind is created from ahankara in goodness. I think ego, that means ahankara, and then the intelligence is from passion. But from this diagram, sorry, the writing is so small, but here it says you can have ahankara in sattvic and rajasvi and tamsi. So according to this chart, it looks like you can have ahankara in all those three modes. So is that correct? Is that correct in thinking? Okay, and so then when we look down, we see that where it says sat, where just before the mind, the arrow that's pointing from where the mind is created, and then you see Adi Devi and Adatmik and Adi Bautik, which we know these are the different kinds of miseries that are caused, and now it all kind of makes sense because it says Adi Devik, which is hand of God, they say, natural disasters, and we can see there's all the demigods are listed there. And then the atatmic miseries, which are to the mind and body, and which we can see down here, all the sense organs for acquiring knowledge. And then the adi bautic, which is the miseries caused by other material elements, like other creatures and things. But okay, so that kind of now, I think this diagram helps to make sense, and especially the next verse coming up, I think this diagram really makes it really helpful to try and see this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Would you, let's see. Can you, there we go. All right. Maharaj says in answer to Saraswati Mata's points, yes, the analysis is right, but the context here in the chart isn't specifically miseries. They're just categories. So yes, he says Adidaivik just means in relation to the demigods and so on. We most commonly hear those terms in regard to the miseries of material existence, but they don't always, 100% of the time, refer to that.
Right. I wanted to draw attention to these two sentences, which are interesting. As Prabhupada says in the first paragraph, as far as intelligence is concerned, it is clearly stated here that it is a product of egoism and passion. By practice, one comes to the point of the mode of goodness. And it goes on, by surrendering or fixing the mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes a great personality. So from what I glean here, even though intelligence is a product of the mode of passion, by practice, one can come to the point of goodness. In other words, it's not a disqualifier. My intelligence is always going to be in the mode of passion. I'm never going to go anywhere but this. It's, very unfortunate break to be always in the mode of passion. But by practice, one can become elevated in terms of his intelligence or her intelligence, become Krishna conscious.
Which is very good news for us, because if our intelligence isn't naturally channeled that way, we can develop a defeatist mentality unless we are reminded of this practice point. And Venkatesh Prabhu in the comments confirms that klesha means misery. For example, adidavika klesha. One point that I wanted to raise, and maybe the assembly can, at the very end of the purport, Prabhupada says, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he has to come back to the platform of purified desire, the purified desire for devotional service. And then he says, engagement in the senses of the Lord when the senses are purified in Krishna consciousness. So that's Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir. Is it Uchyate or Uttamam? I think it's Uchyate. I'm not sure. But that's called pure devotion. And this may be Uchyate. Thank you, Maharaj. This may be just the plainest point ever raised in this class, but I find it encouraging and also interesting that a living entity who may be completely entangled in the modes of nature, if he gets the right guidance and if he takes up the proper practice, he can actually develop devotion to the Lord. I mean, that's the thesis of everything that we're reading, but still, sometimes it may strike us or not that is the goal of everything, and that is possible. That is the procedure that we are being given, and the end result of that procedure is that we actually develop that devotion. And once we do, all the mind and senses hankering and lamenting for this and that, it's no longer there. I was reading in Bhagavad Gita today, 4th chapter, where Krishna is telling Arjuna that when you become fixed in this knowledge, then there's no chance of falling back to the material platform. And that reassurance of when one's senses are properly engaged, then there is a position that you can reach in your life where you actually no longer fall back to the material platform. Satsvarup Maharaj very early on asked Prabhupada that very question. Is there a stage of Krishna consciousness that one can reach that one no longer falls back from? And Prabhupada said, yes. Oh, thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. In the chat, he's posted the full verse that Prabhupada is referencing here at the end of the purport. Sarvapadi vinir muktang tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanang bhaktir uchyate. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. Would you also be able to type in chat exactly where you got that full verse and commentary from? I've been looking for that actually for another reason. Any other comments or questions? Oh, Sucharadeva Prabhu. And we have another. Sucharadeva Prabhu says, when we are telling ourselves to concentrate, who is telling this? The soul or the intelligence? And to whom? I assume you're asking when we are telling ourselves to concentrate, for example, on Hare Krishna mantra or the equivalent. Yeah, yes. The Maharaj says it depends whose voice it is. Maharaj continues, we may tell ourselves, concentrate, or Krishna may be telling us that. One other point, Maharaj says, on a separate matter. In the verse, the active senses depend on the vital force. And the knowledge gathering senses depend on intelligence. This is so entirely reasonable, he says. If you want to act, you need pran, physical force. And if you want to perceive things clearly by seeing, hearing, or whatever, you need clear intelligence. Yes. Panchatattva Prabhu comments, Stephen Hawking, as an example, not much prana, but his intelligence was quite active. Maybe not in the right way, but yeah. All right. Any more comments or questions on this particular verse? Vijay Krishna Prabhu said he would read the next verse, and we are reminding him so he can be ready to do so if he's still willing.
Yes, I'm still willing.
All right, please go ahead, Prabhu.
And Ekendra Prabhu, the purport is a long purport. Should I recite it all by myself, or should I share the recitation with the other readers?
Why don't you recite it yourself, and then we'll discuss after.
Of course, Prabhu. Thank you very much. You're most kind. So this is text 32. Tamasakcha vikurvana bhagavad virya choditat shabdamatram abhut tasman nabashrotram tu shabdagam. Translation. When ego is in ignorance, is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. Purport. It appears from this verse that all the objects of our sense gratification are the products of egoism in ignorance. It is understood from this verse that by agitation of the element of egoism in ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is the subtle form of ether. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound, one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavriti Shabdat means, quote, liberation by sound, unquote. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now, we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. There is sound in the spiritual world also. If we approach that sound, then our spiritual life begins, and the other requirements for spiritual advancement can be supplied. We have to understand very clearly that sound is the beginning of the creation of all material objects for our sense gratification. Similarly, if sound is purified, our spiritual necessities also are produced from sound. Here it is said that from sound the ether became manifested, and that the air became manifested from ether. How the ethereal sky comes from sound, how the air comes from sky, and how fire comes from air will be explained later on. Sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of Shrotram, the ear. The ear is the first sense of receiving knowledge. One must give oral reception to any knowledge one wants to receive, either material or spiritual. Therefore, Shrotram is very important. The Vedic knowledge is called Shruti. Knowledge has to be received by hearing. By hearing only can we have access to either material or spiritual enjoyment. In the material world, we manufacture many things for our material comfort simply by hearing. They are already there, but just by hearing, one can transform them. If we want to build a very high skyscraper, this does not mean that we have to create it. The materials for the skyscraper, wood, metal, earth, etc., are already there. But we make our intimate relationship with those already created material elements by hearing how to utilize them. Modern economic advancement for creation is also a product of hearing, and similarly, one can create a favorable field of spiritual activities by hearing from the right source. Arjuna was a gross materialist in the bodily conception of life and was suffering from the bodily concept very acutely. But simply by hearing, Arjuna became a spiritualized, Krishna-conscious person. Hearing is very important, and that hearing is produced from the sky. By hearing only can we make proper use of that which already exists. The principle of hearing, to properly utilize preconceived materials, is applicable to spiritual paraphernalia as well. We must hear from the proper spiritual source.
Some thoughts, Prabhu?
I would like to hear first from Maharaj, if I may ask. If Maharaj has anything to say.
Maharaj says this verse is paradigmatic. It sets forth the structure we'll see as things further unfold. The Lord's energy as time agitates ego in ignorance. And in this way, an element is created. In this case, ether. Then the corresponding sense object, here, sound, and from that, the corresponding sense. Here, the ear. And then, by further transformation, we get the next element. In this case, air. And so the creation unfolds. In some previous classes, Maharaj has used the term exfoliate, as with a flower starting in a bud and gradually opening. Things move in stages from one to the next. And Panchatattva Prabhu says, time and sex energy of the Lord are synonymous. Apparently so. That's the way that Srila Vishwanath glosses this verse. He equates the sex energy with time. Bhagavat Virya, Maharaj says. So Virya means strength, and especially sexual strength. We have our English word virile. Which is cognate with virya. And Srila Vishwanath equates Bhagavad Virya with the time energy. Saraswati Mata has a comment/question here. I'm confused how the entire material manifestation began from sound. I thought it was the Lord's glance that started the process. Also, those who are deaf acquire knowledge by seeing or sign language. So Maharaj replies, the Lord's glance carries the time energy. Panchatattva Prabhu comments that seeing or sign language is still representative of sounds. So Maharaj continues, the time energy then agitates the elements of material nature. So yes, it starts with the Lord's glance, and then one thing leads to another. So, some thoughts, Vijay Krishna Prabhu?
Yes, Ekendra Prabhu. I, I, I just loved it, the sentence at the very end, which ends the, and thank you, Jayadvaita Maharaj, for your indispensable comments. And the comments of the other participants. I just loved it. The last sentence of the first paragraph. It goes as follows, quote, "Similarly, if sound is purified, our spiritual necessities also are produced from sound," unquote. I just loved it. So somewhere our spiritual necessities can be found, and here you have it, where to find it. You just have to purify sound. That's what we do when we chant the Maha Mantra, no? I think I may be wrong, but and that's it for my comments. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome.
Gurudas Prabhu comments in the chat, Haribol Maharaj, obeisances and obeisances to the devotees. I accept the Bhagavatam version, absolutely, but it seems counterintuitive to equate the time element with sexual energy. They seem to act in such different ways. Or is my understanding faulty? Probably. Maharaj says, why so different? From sex, we get creation. Nothing happens with the woman, but by contact with the man, conception. Gurudas goes on to say, well, for example, time moves so gradually and regularly, while sex energy seems more spontaneous, etc. And Maharaj goes on, so the material elements are inert. Nothing happening. But when Krishna glances, conception. And if I could just add to what Maharaj is saying, within that glance, time is included. That's what sets everything into motion. Maharaj says, as for speed, our sex energy and the Lord's sex energy are not the same. Murai Gupta Prabhu says, sometimes in the material world, a glance is all that's needed for one thing to lead to another. Yes, indeed. I missed a comment before we keep going. Oh, yes, Maharaj says there's a sexual parallel there too. Yes. Just going back a little bit, Panchatattva Prabhu quotes Srila Prabhupada speaking with Alice Coltrane on July 1st, 1977. As much as possible, you chant. Then everything will be revealed and you'll be able to do something. I started this movement simply by chanting. Yeah, Maharaj says the expression is there. Before you were a gleam in your father's eye. Sucharadeva Prabhu says, talking about creation, why does Prabhupada say that consideration of the Paramatma and impersonal Brahman arose after the creation? Before the creation, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead existed in the purport to Bhagavatam 6.4.47. Okay. Well, we can look at that. Maharaj says we'd have to look at the purport, but regarding the Paramatma, he goes on to say, there's no need of Paramatma until we have the material world. Srila Prabhupada gives an example. During the Kumbh Mela, the Indian police force creates a big police unit for the Mela. Before the Mela, no need of that unit. And after the Mela, the unit just merges back into the police force. But while the Mela is going on, the unit is required. So Krishna expands as Paramatma as long as we have the material world. Otherwise, no need. Is that all right, Suchara David Prabhu? Yes, yes, thank you very much, Prabhu says. Thank you very much, Maharaj. It is now 7:56. If there are some more comments, we can have a couple minutes. Otherwise, it'd be nice to end with kirtan right about now. All right. Since you led the beginning kirtan, Panchatattva Prabhu, would you like to nominate tonight's closing kirtan leader?
Yes. Krishna Konteya Prabhu, would you be so kind as to grace us with kirtan? Can't quite hear you at the moment. No, still can't hear you. Can you bring it up a little?
I'm all the way up.
Okay, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now.
Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna. Hare
Krishna,
Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Rock dropping out. It's me, that's my.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Isagora, Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo, Nita Gora, Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo, Nita Gora, Premanande, Haribo. Jayam Vishnupad Brahmsa Parivrajakacharya Astutar Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Brahmsa Parivrajakacharya Astutar Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sri Mathura Dham Ki Jai Sri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai Shri Guru and Gauranga Das Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai Jai. Thank you so much, Krishna Kanteya Prabhu. Venkatesh Prabhu posts in the chat, appeal for Vaishnava Seva. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, there is a Srila Prabhupada disciple, Her Grace Paulini Mataji, currently living in North Carolina area. After her husband, His Grace Haripad Prabhu, left his body a few months ago. If someone can connect her to some devotee care, kindly let me know. And he has his contact information in the chat. Thank you, Venkatesh Prabhu. Morai Gupta Prabhu says, Jai, thank you, Maharaj, and all devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone, for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj and jai.
Jai. Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Haribol Guru Maharaj. Haribol. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you again on Monday. Hare Krishna.